For decades, the Zodiac Killer has haunted the history of American crime, leaving behind cryptic ciphers, chilling letters, and an unsolved case that has left families and investigators desperate for answers. But could the identity of this notorious killer finally be revealed? Today, we dive deep into new revelations about a man who became a prime suspect, a man who displayed chilling behaviors and sinister connections to the Zodiac's crimes. The Zodiac Killer terrorized Northern California between 1968 and 1974, taking credit for multiple attacks and openly taunting police and the public through letters and cryptic ciphers. He is confirmed to have killed at least 5 people, although he claimed to have taken 37 lives. The Zodiac's chilling method involved both brutal violence and psychological manipulation, as he sent letters to newspapers boasting of his murders and challenging authorities with complex ciphers, some of which remain unsolved. Over the years, numerous suspects were investigated, but one particular man became central to the case. Known to authorities and feared by some who knew him, this man displayed behaviors that seemed to align disturbingly well with the Zodiac's profile. Could this mysterious figure have been hiding in plain sight? As investigators delved deeper into the background of their prime suspect, his troubling behaviors began to align with a series of brutal crimes that had already shaken California. These weren't just any crimes. These were the confirmed attacks of the Zodiac Killer, each one more chilling than the last. Let's walk through each of these terrifying encounters and the victims who tragically crossed paths with one of America's most infamous killers. Our suspect, a former elementary school teacher, was known by acquaintances as an aggressive, troubled individual. Those who knew him spoke of unsettling behaviors that went beyond the norm. Some friends and family recall him bringing them to remote, eerie places without explanation and talking about violence in disturbing detail. Certain traits, a love of power and control, and an apparent obsession with dark, cryptic symbols, caught the attention of those around him. Decades later, certain families would recall chilling encounters with him, suggesting he knew more about the Zodiac than anyone realized. One family in particular, the Seawater family, would recall disturbing memories of him taking them to locations eerily close to the Zodiac's murder scenes. While these 5 attacks have been directly tied to the Zodiac through his letters and other evidence, investigators remain haunted by several other unsolved murders that bear eerie similarities to his methods. Were these additional crimes part of the Zodiac's elusive trail of terror, or the work of another twisted mind? Let's examine the victims who may also have fallen prey to the Zodiac. December 20th, 1968, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, Lake Herman Road. Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, 2 young high school students, were parked along Lake Herman Road in Benicia, California. The secluded area was a popular spot for couples, and they were ambushed by an unknown assailant. The killer fired shots to scare them from the car, then fatally shot both Betty Lou and David in a calculated attack. This murder would later be attributed to the Zodiac Killer, marking the start of his reign of terror. July 4th, 1969. Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau, Blue Rock Springs Park. Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were parked at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, California, when a stranger approached. He shone a flashlight into their car before opening fire, killing Darlene and severely injuring Michael, who miraculously survived, and later gave a description of the attacker. Shortly after the attack, someone claiming to be the Zodiac called the Vallejo Police Department, admitting responsibility and referencing the Lake Herman Road murders. September 27th, 1969. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, Lake Berryessa. College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were enjoying a picnic at Lake Berryessa when they were confronted by a man wearing a hooded mask and a symbol resembling a crosshair on his chest. He tied them up and repeatedly stabbed them, ultimately killing Cecilia, while Brian survived. Before leaving, the killer wrote a message on Brian's car door, marking the date of the attack and claiming responsibility for previous murders. The crime showed a significant escalation in the Zodiac's methods, as he moved from shooting his victims to a more brutal, close-contact approach. October 11th, 1969. Paul Stine, Presidio Heights, San Francisco taxi driver. Paul Stine was murdered at point-blank range in his cab. Unlike the previous cases, Paul was not part of a couple, and the setting was far more public. The Zodiac removed a piece of Paul's shirt, later mailing it to the San Francisco Chronicle as proof of the crime. Witnesses saw the attacker leaving the scene, but police miscommunication allowed the killer to slip away. This was the Zodiac's last confirmed murder, but he continued his taunts through letters, suggesting a desire for infamy rather than just a drive to kill. While these 5 attacks have been directly tied to the Zodiac through his letters and other evidence, investigators remain haunted by several other unsolved murders that bear eerie similarities to his methods. Were these additional crimes part of the Zodiac's elusive trail of terror, or the work of another twisted mind? Cherry Jo Bates, October 30th, 1966, Riverside, California. Cherry Jo Bates, an 18-year-old college student at Riverside City College, was found brutally murdered on the campus grounds on the evening of October 30th, 1966. Bates was last seen studying in the campus library. When she didn't return home, her body was discovered near her car, which had been tampered with, leaving her stranded. The killer had apparently disabled her vehicle, forcing her to seek assistance. Bates was then attacked, stabbed repeatedly, and left in a secluded alley. Shortly after her murder, police received anonymous letters with chilling details about the crime, along with a confession letter signed with a symbol similar to the Zodiac's. Many believe this early killing was the Zodiac's first known crime, though it remains officially unconfirmed. The Riverside letters use language similar to that in the Zodiac's later writings, linking him circumstantially to Bates's murder. Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, June 4th, 1963, Santa Barbara County, California. High school students Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards were found murdered on a secluded beach near Santa Barbara, California. The young couple, who had planned a day at the beach as part of their senior skip day, were ambushed, shot multiple times, and left tied together in a small shack nearby. Investigators noted the similarity between this attack and the Zodiac's later patterns of targeting couples in isolated locations. The brutality of the murder, along with the killer's apparent control over the scene, bore some resemblance to the Zodiac's modus operandi. Although no definitive link has been proven, the case remains suspicious, and many Zodiac researchers see this as a possible early Zodiac killing. One name eventually rose to the top of the suspect list: Arthur Leigh Allen. A former elementary school teacher, Allen first crossed paths with the Seawater family through their local community. Known to be charming, even fatherly, Allen quickly ingratiated himself with the family, particularly the children, who saw him as a trusted adult figure.
Mr. Allen just endeared himself to us really quick, and he treated us like royalty, like his own kids. We thought he was just the best.
But beneath this friendly exterior, Allen harbored dark interests and unsettling behaviors that would later become impossible for the Seawaters and investigators to ignore. Allen's close relationship with the family would ultimately leave them questioning just how much they truly knew about him. Arthur Leigh Allen's relationship with the Seawater family went far beyond that of a family friend. It was a disturbing connection that now raises questions about just how much Mrs. Seawater and her children may have unknowingly witnessed. As close family friends, Allen used his charm and influence to embed himself deeply within their lives, to the point that the Seawater children recall being with him on trips that eerily align with the timing and locations of Zodiac murders. Mrs. Seawater trusted Allen implicitly, viewing him as a supportive friend, and at times even a confidant. She would often allow him to take her children on adventures, not knowing, or possibly suspecting but ignoring, the dark motives Allen might have had. Despite concerns voiced by the children, she continued to maintain this friendship. Her unwavering support of Allen, even in the face of allegations and police suspicions, suggested she either believed in his innocence or was deeply afraid of the truth.
She was looking for evidence for him not to be, because she had trusted her children with him.
I called my mother and said, look, I've got to tell you something. But she starts laughing. Oh, he was so funny. He was such a joker. And I said, not the way.
Allen didn't just cultivate a friendship with Mrs. Seawater. He carefully built bonds with each of her children. He would take them on excursions to secluded locations under the guise of fun or exploring. Years later, as the Seawater children grew older, they began to recognize the unsettling reality that these outings may have coincided with Zodiac killings. The children later described eerie instances where Allen would talk about violence in strange ways, share cryptic details about the Zodiac, and even make comments that sounded almost like veiled confessions.
It was just him and me. We were sitting there hanging out. I don't know why. I asked him if he was a Zodiac. That's when he told me if he told me that, he would have to kill me too. And I laughed.
Mrs. Seawater may have known more about Allen's dark side than she let on, possibly even suspecting his connection to the Zodiac murders. However, she took this knowledge to her grave, staunchly defending Allen despite mounting evidence. The Seawater family was left with lingering doubts, haunted by the possibility that their mother had shielded Allen, either out of fear or misguided loyalty. One of the most haunting moments for the Seawater family came when, as an adult, a family member received a phone call in which Allen allegedly confessed, "I am the Zodiac."
Mr. Allen, were you the Zodiac? There was deathly silence. I didn't hear anything for a second. And I hear this gasping noise. He was just crying. He collected himself enough and he came back on in a real weak voice. He goes, "Yes, it was me."
This admission, combined with years of traumatic memories, cemented their belief in his guilt. Allen's grooming, psychological manipulation, and ability to appear as a trustworthy figure, only to reveal sinister behavior, left the family convinced that he might indeed be the Zodiac. Police grew suspicious when Arthur Leigh Allen seemed to mirror the Zodiac's disturbing fascination with violence and manipulation. Investigators discovered he owned a watch with the Zodiac symbol engraved on it, an eerie parallel to the symbol found in the killer's letters. Additionally, his conversations often included phrases that matched wording used in Zodiac's letters, a detail that haunted investigators.
He talked about the shooting the tires on the school bus and picking the little darlings off as they come bouncing out of the bus.
Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out.
I thought maybe I just don't want to be around this guy. I thought it was a symptom of a disturbed spirit.
Police had close calls, but were never able to gather enough concrete evidence. In multiple instances, the man narrowly escaped arrest due to a lack of DNA or other definitive proof, leading investigators to wonder if they'd encountered the Zodiac but had let him slip away. Arthur Leigh Allen's behavior fits chillingly with that of the Zodiac's psychological profile. Described by those who knew him as someone who sought control and validation, he also demonstrated a keen interest in cryptic symbols and word games, similar to the Zodiac's taunting ciphers. The Zodiac Killer's letters displayed a need for attention, challenging police and the public to catch him if they can. This man seemed to exude a similar confidence, bragging about his intelligence and boasting that he could easily outsmart others. Those who knew him saw a duality, a quiet exterior hiding a calculating mind. Arthur Leigh Allen's chilling behaviors, eerie symbols, and unsettling statements have cast a long shadow over the Zodiac case. Considered by law enforcement as a prime suspect for the Zodiac killings for years, his life took a dark turn when he was convicted of child molestation and sentenced to prison. Notably, the Zodiac killings stopped during Allen's incarceration, a fact that only fueled suspicions. Investigators saw this as a potential clue, linking Allen's absence from society to the sudden halt in the Zodiac's activity. Yet despite the circumstantial evidence and the timeline that seemed to align, concrete proof remained elusive. Despite his death in 1992 and countless hours of investigation, no formal charges were ever brought against him. The question of whether Allen was indeed the Zodiac continues to haunt investigators, true crime enthusiasts, and the Seawater family, who lived in the shadow of his darkness for years. Modern DNA technology is now offering a new path to truth. Cold case forensic testing on key Zodiac evidence, like items allegedly linked to Allen, could finally yield answers to questions that have gripped the nation for decades. As DNA testing unfolds, there's a renewed hope that we might finally uncover the true identity of the Zodiac Killer, a truth that could bring peace to families and resolution to one of the most perplexing cases of our time. Until that day, Arthur Leigh Allen's connection to these heinous crimes remains a dark, unresolved chapter in the Zodiac mystery. Arthur Leigh. Allen's life remains one of intrigue and horror, particularly for those who knew him. Was he truly the Zodiac Killer? Or was he merely a troubled man with a dark fascination? The case may never be fully closed, but the evidence surrounding Allen continues to disturb and fascinate. Thank you for watching. Do you think Arthur Leigh Allen is the Zodiac Killer? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into true crime. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.